Hello. I want to share some thoughts on Veritasium's very nice, most recent video. What is the real logic behind the one-boxer position? Well, first, let's be very clear about some aspects of the premises of the question. The supercomputer makes its prediction about your choice solely on the basis of observations that it made before you learned about the problem. That's important. And so the premise is not framed as being that for every individual person, the probability that the supercomputer would correctly predict that person's choice is close to 100%. The framing is just that the supercomputer has a historical track record that is statistically very good. In other words, to make this a bit more precise, nearly 100% of the people who the computer predicted would choose the mystery box alone did choose the mystery box alone, and nearly 100% of the people who the computer predicted would choose both boxes did choose both boxes. Now, incidentally, a point that's worth bringing up is it's not obvious that for the real world, this level of statistical accuracy is actually possible. It's not obvious whether or not there is a high enough level of determinism or statistically emergent predictability to allow for this. But let's just continue on the basis that this is possible, while remembering to keep in the back of our mind that it's not actually obvious that this is possible. So again, what is the real logic behind the one-boxer position? Well, on the one hand, I know that virtually every person before me who the supercomputer has predicted to choose both boxes did indeed choose both boxes. And so, if I now choose only the mystery box, then it necessarily follows that either I'm an extremely exceptional person, or else the observations that the supercomputer was able to make before I knew about this problem caused the supercomputer to predict me choosing only the mystery box and to put the $1 million into the mystery box before I knew about this problem. But on the other hand, I also know that virtually every person before me who the supercomputer has predicted to choose only the mystery box did indeed choose only the mystery box. And so, if I now choose both boxes, then it necessarily follows that either I'm an extremely exceptional person, or else the observations that the supercomputer was able to make before I knew about this problem caused the supercomputer to predict me choosing both boxes and to seal the mystery box with nothing inside it before I knew about this problem. Now, unless I have good cause to suspect otherwise, I am probably not going to be an extremely exceptional person. And therefore, I should choose only the mystery box. Okay, so is this reasoning valid? Well, let's think a bit about what the exact meaning of the question is. What should I do in this situation? Well, let's start by imagining a different situation. Someone is financially struggling, and they're offered to play a lottery. To play this lottery, you need to pay $2,000. There's a 1 in a million probability of winning, in which case you get back your $2,000 plus an additional $50,000. But if you don't win, you get nothing. You just lose the $2,000 that you paid to play. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that what the person should do in this situation is to not play this lottery. Okay, but now let's imagine that this person who we're talking about has a gambling addiction, and is also rather given over to superstition, and feels a sense that at some point soon in their life they're going to get really lucky. Is it possible that the person could become so entrenched in this way of thinking that there's almost no way for anyone to persuade them to not play this lottery? Well, I think the answer is yes. And so, in that case, do we still say that what the person should do is to not play this lottery? Well, of course we do. The question of what the person should do is not defined with reference to how the person perceives what they should do. Rather, the question is simply asking, what's the optimal utility strategy for a free variable placeholder person that is inserted into the circumstances that our actual person is in? You see, there already exists a true answer as to what course of action the person actually will take. But we all recognize that that fact doesn't negate the validity of the question, what should the person do, or retrospectively, what should the person have done given the knowledge that they had at the time. So we all implicitly recognize that asking about strategy or about optimization or about what a person should do is defined with reference to a free variable placeholder person that is placed into the situation that our actual person is in. And so now, going back to the original question, suppose a person's general personal characteristics are ones that would naturally incline this person towards selecting only the mystery box. And so the supercomputer recognizes this and puts $1 million into the mystery box. And the person is then put into the position of needing to choose. The person's general personal characteristics did affect the behavior of the supercomputer, but once the person is now in this particular situation of needing to choose, the higher utility choice for a free variable placeholder person inserted into this situation is to go against the historical general tendencies of the person and choose both boxes. By definition, when we ask the question of what a person should do, that is the type of consideration that we're actually asking about. Now, at this point, you might be thinking, hold on, it feels like you're just playing word games in order to redefine the problem in such a way as to make the arguments of the one boxes irrelevant. The question in Newcomb's problem is obviously not intended to be about an arbitrary placeholder person, but about the actual person in the situation. And my response would be, if that's how you perceive it, then try to give a precise formulation of what you perceive to be the meaning of the question, what should the person do? I'm not asking for your answer to the question or for your generalized scheme for calculating the answers to questions of this type. I'm asking for your definition of what the question itself is asking. And I reckon that whatever you give in response to this will end up being a self-referentially defined question, which of course is no question at all. It's just a meaningless grammatical string of words. Without a free variable placeholder person who you insert into the situation in which the computer made its prediction about the actual person, without that, you won't be able to get round self-referential definition. That's what I think. And so the conclusion is, what's the correct solution to Newcomb's paradox? It will either be the two-boxer solution, or it will be that the question is ill-posed and has no answer, depending on how you perceive the nuances of the question. And now, I'd like you to imagine. You've never heard of this problem before. and you receive an invitation to take part in a social experiment. You're told that in this experiment, you'll be spending 100 days with the other participants in the experiment, and you will be subject to very close surveillance for the whole time. All your actions, all your conversations, and so on will be monitored. But you're not yet being told why. Anyway, you agree to take part in this social experiment, and after the 100th day, you're called into an office. And I want you to really picture yourself physically walking into this office and seeing in front of you a team of people standing behind a table, and on this table you can physically see two boxes in front of you, one of which is packed with money and the other is sealed such that you can't see inside it. Now, obviously, at least with current technology, the supercomputer in the original formulation of the problem is science fiction. And, as I've already indicated, it might have to remain science fiction forever. There may just not exist in reality a high enough level of determinism for the near-perfect predictive power hypothesized in the original question to ever be statistically possible. But what might be possible, even today, is to have a team of expert psychologists who, perhaps with some help from AI, have built up the ability to use 100 days of surveillance to predict people's choice of one box or both boxes with over 80% statistical accuracy in both directions. So when I say in both directions, I mean that at least 80% of the people who they predict to choose both boxes do choose both boxes, and at least 80% of the people who they predict to choose only the mystery box do choose only the mystery box. So it's more than just 80% accuracy overall, which I actually think would be very easy to achieve, as I'll explain in a moment. But achieving 80% accuracy in both directions is a lot harder. But nevertheless, I'm prepared to believe that it's possible. So you walk into this office, and the team of people that you see standing behind the table explain to you that they are the team of expert psychologists who I've just described, and they explain to you for the very first time the situation that you're in. And it's a real offer in front of you to either pick up the mystery box that you can see on the table and walk away, or pick up both of the boxes that you can see on the table and walk away. Well, I think I can pretty much guarantee that if you really were physically in that situation, physically looking at these two boxes on the table, you wouldn't hesitate to take both boxes. So when I said that achieving at least 80% overall accuracy would be quite easy, the strategy to achieve this is just to predict that everyone will take both boxes. But as I say, getting at least 80% accuracy in both directions is quite a lot harder. There probably will be a very small number of exceptional people who, when physically put in this position of seeing the two boxes, and who understand the rules of the game and fully trust that the psychologists are being truthful, would nevertheless still choose only the mystery box. But I don't think that this exceptional group of people will mostly consist of people being driven by evidential decision theory. I reckon that most of the people in this small exceptional group will be superstitiously minded people who imagine that there is some kind of karma inbuilt into the fabric of the world that has some non-time restricted power to enable reverse chronological causations, and these people, in the moment that they have to make the choice, feel a suspicion that this karma intends to personally favour them through causing the foreseen decision of choosing only the mystery box to mystically influence the psychologist's prior thought processes. Okay, well, ultimately, my position is this. In any real situation where someone finds themselves in an actually possible implementation of Newcomb's problem, they should choose both boxes. We often hear the phrase, correlation does not imply causation. But what's the practical purpose of this phrase? It's to remind us that when we engage in decision-making based on historical statistics, these historical statistics are not inherently what define the correct probabilities for the decision tree representing our particular present situation at hand. The historical statistics may serve as a guide, but they can also be a misleading guide when we're not careful. When you walked into that office and saw the team of psychologists, and they explained to you for the very first time what the actual situation is that you were in, no subsequent decision that you could then make would be able to alter the reality of what your personal traits and dispositions had been during the psychologist's earlier surveillance of you when you didn't know the situation that you were going to be in. In Newcomb's problem, there is no reverse chronological causation, and therefore, in any actually possible implementation of Newcomb's problem, for any given individual who happens to find themselves in that implementation of Newcomb's problem, the conditional distribution of utility for the two available choices, conditioned on all the knowledge that this individual has of the situation and of themselves and of everything else they know, these conditional distributions of utility will never favour choosing only the mystery box. Well, thank you for listening.